Good evening to everyone who has joined us today. Thank you very much, whether you are evening in South Africa or in the UK, or whether it's early afternoon or somewhat other time elsewhere in the world. We welcome everyone from around the globe. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Karen Constanson. I'm chairman of the South African Chamber of Commerce, and I'd like to welcome you to our Heritage Day event. South Africa holds Heritage Day tomorrow, and we look forward to just spending some more relaxed time understanding what's wonderful things some people have done for South Africa and for the youth, particularly in the South African environment. When I came across the idea of what it was I wanted to do, and it was in response to our Youth Day event that we had back in June, where I listening to people as to what it was, what prompted them to do charitable things. And I suddenly realized how many people I knew who had a common theme in why they had gone into a charitable activity in South Africa. So here we have two Englishmen and an Irishman who had gone to South Africa on holiday and had been absorbed into the earth and the need of the country and have done something very constructive about it, and it's become part of their lives. We have three very different themes that are being showcased today. That of building an education, tactical support and solutions for the most vulnerable, and educating the world and the youth of South Africa about their forefathers and what they stood for, the genuine human rights history that underpins South Africa and what it has become today. So it's an education theme, but education about the country's history. So that is what inspired me. And I'd like to, we brought together these three individuals and they're going to share this with us. There is a Q&A function. Please, by all means, use it. I will be watching it. And if your questions are aligned to what we're doing and are interesting, I'll do everything I can to put as many of them as I can to the individuals. We only have an hour in which to operate, but please put them there because we can always post them to them afterwards. Some of these people will be, or should I put it this way, in the email that comes out to you tomorrow, there will be links to their charities. If you want to do anything constructive, you are welcome. But this is not about raising funds, this is about raising awareness. So I would like to start, first of all, by introducing Niall Mellon.
Hi, Sharon.
Welcome, Niall. I've known Niall for a long period of time. I feel like I've known you for life, but I know that's not quite true. Niall Mellon is an Irish entrepreneur, charity chief executive and property developer who founded the Niall Mellon Township Trust to provide homes to impoverished communities in South Africa's townships. Niall will give to others everything he has. He's the kind of man who is just so genuinely cares and just will give to the expense of himself. Every year, Mellon Educate organises what is now known and renowned for being called the Building Blitz, a trip to South Africa for volunteers from all over the world to travel there and help with the building of schools. Now, I know family members and I know some serious business people of the UK who've come out of that week scarred, scratches, blisters, all sorts of things. They're used to pushing a pen or pushing a computer mouse, not building bricks and blocks and roofs and ladders and wheelbarrows and cement and all the things you get from doing. Absolutely fascinating. I've enjoyed so many of the films and stories of those building blitz weeks. But what they have achieved is, in building these, they've provided for this infrastructure into poor African communities, and they've housed 175,000 local people, which probably is a bigger number by now. And that wasn't enough for now. Not building the school, that was not enough, because the children will still not be coming out of there as educated learners. So he's moved into education in addition to having built the schools for them. So he's built and renovated 32 schools in the first place and looking to benefit 100,000 primary school children in the process. Now, we're going to show a little video just now, and that is the South African just now, which is in a moment, about the charity and what it does. But what I'd like to start with first, if I may, is I just would love everyone to feel your passion and to feel who you are and what brought you to this. So if I ask you, first you start with, housing, and then there's building schoolrooms and the building blitz. Who partakes in these? How do you get them to go and do it? And how does taking them on a week to South Africa to get blisters, does it raise money and awareness?
Um, well, when you look at the figures that our charity has sort of achieved, you might get the wrong impression that firstly that we're a big charity. We're not really, we're a small charity. And the success has been down to 25,000 people who saw what we were doing and just decided they could spare 1 week of their lives. So people are watching us this evening. Please don't think that we're Apple or Microsoft. We're a very small organization and our continued success depends on finding people who might be able to spare just a total of 1 week in their lives. And Sharon, being Irish, after talking for a minute, I can't remember your first question. Can you just tell me again? Sorry, Sharon, what
who partakes and how does it raise money? So you go for a specific element of people who obviously, do they have money and then they give it and donate it? How does it actually make money taking them on their building week?
Okay, so our trip happens every November, and it could be anywhere from 150 people to our biggest trip on one day, which was 2,000 people. And it's anybody from, a person who has to work and fundraise all year to raise £3,000 or £4,000 to maybe somebody who is a big business person, and for them the harder challenge is actually to take a week out of their lives to work for something like this. And you arrive in Cape Town on a Friday or Saturday, and you spend the next 7 days building classrooms for children who don't have classrooms. And at the end of your week, when you leave Cape Town, you leave behind hundreds of children whose lives are changed forever because you gave away 1 week. So I'm not sure if that's answering your question.
Yes, it does. No, thank you very much. And you have transitioned to doing a certain amount of education as well. Just explain to us the logic behind that, and what added value does it bring, and has it changed the charity in any way?
Well, when we started almost 20 years ago, Nelson Mandela became one of my biggest fans, and I'd regularly get phone calls to give him an update on how we were doing on house building. But he regularly used to ask me, are you going to get into education? And that was something very close to his heart. And for us, for many years, our program was just house building. But 7 or 8 years ago, we decided to extend into education. And for us, I think it has completed the direction that we were meant to go to in South Africa, that so many children dream of a brighter future when they are living in very impoverished, difficult conditions in township lives. And their chances of a good education are enhanced with the extra things that Mellon do. So we build classrooms, and we also provide specialist additional education tuition to try and give children that extra help to succeed in their grades, and hopefully for many of them get to university.
You're one of the many that Nelson Mandela has walked up to, tapped on the shoulder and said, how are you? How are you? And you all turn around and say, what does he want? Yeah. And he gets what he wants out of just about everybody. And so much of it has been focused on education, which is actually just quite amazing what that man has done for empowering the youth of South Africa. I'm going to play the video that you have shared with us. So if I could do that, and we will then come back and have a few moments chat again in a second.
Thank you.
Ek weet daar is 'n groot agterstand waar kinders nie eintlik gehelp word om te lees nie. Ek self 5 kinders het. En ek weet, dit is 'n voordeel wat ons het om 'n kind te kan leer lees en skryf. Ek dink as ons hierdie werk gehad het, dan het ons ook nie geweet wat 'n agterstand die kinders het nie. So ons is bevoorreg om hierdie program in ons skool te hê.
COVID-19 has widened the learning gap of our learners, and even before 2020 there were huge learning barriers in terms of our learners, and this program with the Ready Steady Read Write couldn't have come at a better time.
The levels of literacy at the school are very low. We are trying with this initiative to improve the levels of the school. The aim is to inculcate a culture of reading at the school.
The Mellon Educate Literacy program is focused on closing the gap in basic reading and writing skills for learners from grade R to grade 3. Our learners spend 1 hour once a week in the Literacy Hub, and where they receive one-on-one tutoring. This one-on-one tutoring allows the learners to develop their confidence while learning to read and write in a very relaxing and nurturing environment.
In ons hub werk ek met 9 tutors. Ons literacy tutors is baie gewillig om te werk met die kinders. Hulle het 'n groot passie vir wat hulle doen. Hierdie program, as dit vir meer skole kan bereik, dan sal my hart ook bly wees, want ons kinders het definitief hierdie program nodig.
Ek is baie lief vir die werk wat ek doen en ek het 'n passie vir die werk wat ek doen by die skool. Die verskil wat ek gesien het met die program, die kinders begin, hulle kan nog nie letters bou nie, maar soos die maande gaan, kan ons sien hier nou na die 2de, die 3de maand toe, dan sien ons, hulle kry confidence, ken hulle nou, hulle kan self 'n sinnetjie skryf.
Although reading for meaning is our main focus, our program is community centered. So we don't just work with the child, but we also upskill the young people from the community.
Our Mellon Educate program trains young people from communities around our schools to be tutors. So not only are the learners benefiting from our program, we are creating employment opportunities to our young adults in communities.
Het was vir my so 'n voorreg dat dit my geïnspireer het om na my community op te gaan. Want as ek van die skool af huis toe gaan, dan sien ek daar sit net kinders op die strate en elke Saterdag doen ek die program. Dit het my so geïnspireer om in my community ook 'n community service elke Saterdag vir die kinders te doen.
Our Mellon Educate Literacy tutors receive intensive training for this program. They also receive training in other skills which can assist them for their future career. Many of our tutors opt to study teaching after completing our program. And this is all made possible through our multi-year partnerships we have with many organizations.
I am inspired, really. This program has inspired me a lot. It has brought food on my table. It has brought me back my dignity, because everybody in my community, they respect me for the work that I'm doing, for the help that I'm giving to the kids. I want to open up my creche. I want to pay back to my community for the information that I've got from here. I want my community as well to benefit from it.
Dit is 'n baie groot verantwoordelikheid wat ons het om met die kinders te werk. Maar dit kom ook met 'n voorreg wat ons het om met hulle te werk. Dis 'n voorreg. En ek hoop dat hierdie program baie skole sal bereik, want daar is kinders wat nie kan lees nie. Hulle maak nog steeds hulle klanke onderste bo. Hulle het nog nie 'n idee hoe om regtig wat te skryf nie. So ons het, sal ek sê, baie werk.
Now that's enough to have me in tears. That look on that little boy's face when he turns around and looks up at the end. Goodness me, you choreographed that beautifully. And what's so lovely, and thank you for the attention to detail, you can see it's been done in current times, and with the masks and the sanitizing. And it's just so current and so realistic. So within the COVID and the impact COVID has had upon the work that you've been doing, and I can see it with the physical, there must be additional costs and all sorts of things that you've had to deal with. What is your vision for the future and how has COVID changed that vision?
Well, I think no matter where you live in the world, COVID has impacted everybody in different ways. Our challenge was that when the schools initially closed, I think it was for 4 weeks at the start, that so many of our children are below the poverty line. And in many of our schools, you know, as much as 30% of all the children are already orphans. So we began a feeding program because we were very concerned that we've approximately 50,000 children in the schools that we've built. And we did a study and we felt as many as 20,000 were going to face real food hardship. And so we began a feeding program at the start of COVID that has fed approximately 20,000 people. So that was the first adjustment for us as a charity. And obviously being a small charity, you know, that's been an expensive program to run. The other part then has been that so many people living in townships, you know, are only, you know, a little bit of money away from not being able to feed themselves. And so many who were retrenched faced huge difficulties. And one of the consequences of that has been a considerable upsurge in crime over the last 12 months. Within the schools, we've had to, as you see the spacing there in the classrooms and also in other classrooms, you know, to have to reduce the attendance of the classroom by 50%. Has had a huge knock-on effect that the government have said that 300,000 children have now fully dropped out of primary school. And other figures are claiming 750,000 children have dropped out and won't go back. So we have never had a need as great as this, where we so desperately need help to fund the mentors, those wonderful, you know, young adults that you saw there are teaching children how to read, because so many children get to secondary school and when the specialist subjects commence, they've no chance if they don't have a grounding in language and literacy. So we've made a decision, rather than try to do too much of everything, that we would focus on literacy. And our mentors, we took on this year approximately 60 literacy coaches, but we need 600. And imagine if just one person is watching today and says, you know what, Mellon, I might fund a couple of those literacy coaches. What a wonderful feeling. I mean, Sharon, you were saying you're moved watching the video. And just imagine if somebody is watching this today who says, you know what, maybe I could fund one or two of those coaches. That our average mentors or coaches reach several hundred children, you know, over a 12-month period.
But the part I love is they actually become educated and employable themselves. And
yes,
they
and
get new vision. The double whammy is very clever.
It's really special because that wonderful lady who spoke about her self-esteem in her community, and if you think about that even further, that she's looked upon with admiration because she's teaching their children how to read, and it is a real reminder of the determination and willingness of so many people in these communities to get a better future for their children. 2 years ago, we had a difficulty in one of our new schools. There was real trouble at the start of the new school term when hundreds of parents were there outside and they were literally rioting to get their children into our schools. And if that doesn't underscore the deserving help that so many of these people need.
Belief in what you've offered. Now, absolutely amazing. I'll come back to you at the end for your last words of wisdom. I now am going to transition to another fascinating story, again, to somebody I've known for many, many years. Bob, could you join us on screen? Hi, Bob. The needs of the requirements for others was something Bob knew from a very young age. Living on estates in northern England, he was out dispersing vegetables and things from his grocer father. He then did the same with Christmas hampers from an employer that he was doing. So right the way through, it's in his DNA. Bob wants to help and wants to give and wants to improve the lives of others at all times. The other sorts of things that Bob has enjoyed doing in his efforts to raise funds, some of those that I picked up is walking Hadrian's Wall, for example, the Thames footpath, planting thousands of trees. And then his foundation, which he has, which is a UK-based foundation, then spread its roots and established in addition into South Africa, where it supports 6 orphanages just outside of Johannesburg. Not only is he a man who cares, as you can understand, as much as he does. He was telling us a story earlier about his family. He really cares about people. Not only that, he is an incredibly powerful, successful businessman who took Mears from minnow to market leader over a period of 20 years and been their CEO and then subsequently the chairman. No nonsense, hands-on achiever with significant experience at board level. He was honored in the New Year's honors for an OBE in 2016 for his charitable and business achievements. A man I've enjoyed since spending the odd glass of wine with, solving the world's problems. I'm not quite sure how many really succeeded, Bob. I think you probably got on with and did it. But the lovely thing is you can talk charity and business with the same individual with the same degree of passion. A couple of things I'd like for you to share with us, Bob, if you would. Tell us about the moment that South Africa joined your caring stream and needs and came into your vision and into the foundation. Why South Africa? I'm glad, but why?
So, firstly, let me correct you. It was my mother, actually, who was a grocer. My father worked for her, and I've had to correct many journalists over the years when they ask the obvious question, what did your father do?
The problem that we've got is the facts on where I went to go and find them did not give any indication that it was a family business. Should we put it that way? Thank you.
Anyway, so when journalists have asked me many times, what did your father do? Expected the obvious answer. I say he worked for my mother. Anyway, yes, I grew up, and coming home from school, I was directed to go and deliver food or go and light somebody's fire, or in one case, go and pull an old lady out of the path because she was stuck. Anyway, I didn't realise at the time, but what did it do? It wedded me to the community, didn't it? And I suppose then going forward a number of years, over 20 years ago, I formed my foundation and started trying to go and help in countries where they needed help. Of course, there is help all around the world. And I started in Brazil, and I built a school in Brazil. I took 50 volunteers with me. I then moved on to Ecuador, where I built a hospital, a small regional hospital, and planted 10,000 trees with help from the Ecuadorian government. And then Sri Lanka and India and Belarus, post-Chernobyl. And then I landed in South Africa, being asked to go and look at an orphanage just outside Joburg. And the moment I landed there, I felt that this was the place for me. I saw need, obviously, but what I saw, unlike in certain parts of Asia, I saw people who were grateful for me giving them whatever it was, a rand or a t-shirt or whatever it was. They were thankful. And I've never been anywhere else since. So I've been in South Africa now, I don't know, 15 years perhaps. I started with one orphanage. I spent a number of weeks there initially. What are your needs? Identifying the needs. When they came round and said to me they needed electric gates, I thought I've done enough here. That was in year 3. And what do we need? Let's look for another one. One became 8. I think we currently support 8 orphanages in South Africa. And typically, I take a bunch of volunteers from the UK. I fund everything myself. Latterly, they've started paying a couple of £1,000 to go there. They're fed and watered and flown there for that. So it costs them nothing in real terms. And as all these things, we're a smaller version of what Niall does, but not focused just on building. The last 3 years, well, until the pandemic, the 2 previous years prior to the pandemic, we created medical centres in some very, very difficult unadopted townships, unadopted settlements, sorry. And these were the nearest medical centre was miles away. And we basically got the old, typically the metal containers, we remodeled them, we put in all the equipment, and then we paid for medical staff. And we had the great opportunity at one point of a bunch of ophthalmic surgeons came out with us, and we did eye testing. And whenever I'm asked, what does your charity do? And I said, we restored eyesight to 2 7-year-old kids. That said it all for me. And that was an evolution of what we've done. So we continue to do medical centres. For the last, typically, we take 50, 60 people, primarily from the UK. They then twin up with local South African residents who want to work. You will know, lots of people on this call will know when I say, I get people coming up to me saying, Uncle Bob, I'd like to come and work. Right, good. Well, there's no money. Sorry, there's no money. These people are paid to come here. They turn around and walk off. Occasionally you get some people who say, well, you are doing for our community what we want to do. We will help, and they get involved. Our biggest project was 3 years ago, we built a church, and it was a massive church. The church seats 200 very comfortably. It started off as a tin shack. It then became this monstrous size building. It's a great building. And the local community are running as a community centre as well. So what have we done in the last couple of years? Not very much. We haven't taken any volunteers from the UK because they can't go. At the same time, my trustees, who have been very thankful for me funding this, I'm very thankful for my passion, my desire to actually get involved and continue to be involved, decided that we should bring somebody in to help, and so we've got sustainability. So we have somebody who now runs it, and she was a former volunteer, and she does it in almost a part-time basis for literally no money. That's a great thing for us. So what we've done the last 2 years, we've had feeding programs in each of the orphanages, feeding about 500 kids a day in the larger orphanages, and in the other ones, the smaller ones. Along the way, we've picked up some great other charities who we work in support with. Zabra, who supplies with bras that we go out and give out. I've also formed shirts for Africa. I get soccer shirts and sports shirts, and I get kids coming up to me asking me whether this shirt that I gave them 3 years ago for Exeter City or some unknown team, are they in the Premier? Oh yeah, they're one of the top teams there. Yeah. So I get that. The great thing about the bras is that in one of my orphanages, we had a great deal number of rapes, and a woman wearing a bra in South Africa reduces the incidence of rape. It's amazing. So we are. I know Jeanette, who's on this call, I think she's telling me she's got a couple of thousand ready to give me to actually get me to ship out there on our next trip. So we work with them, and of course the kids. I was disappointed to hear from Niall, of course, that number of kids who've dropped out of education. Again, people will know that education is free in South Africa as long as you can provide a uniform. So obviously we've had to provide uniforms as we've gone. We're a smaller version of what Niall does. Very much, we don't just build. We do education. We do the medical testing and eye tests. We do have every year we have a painting program, and I get people returning saying, for Christ's sake, don't give me a paintbrush every day again, Bob, like you did last year. The wonderful thing, just like Niall said, is you have them there for a week, and without any exception, they have a life-changing experience, because they have never understood what poverty actually means. They've never understood what need is. They've never understood what pleasure you get from giving. And if you can give, no matter whether you're a pauper or a prince, it's a fantastic feeling. And I have had great pleasures from what I've done in South Africa, and will continue to do as we move forward. So it's great. We are planning to have a program in February of next year. We usually go out in September, similar to now because of the weather. But we're planning a program there. We've got 40 people or so signed up, and we've got the programs lined up. Another medical centre, again, another set of paintbrushes on order, and basically tarting up. And we've always got a forward plan of what we'll do and when we'll do it. And the key for me has always been the same as in my business. In South Africa, I under-promise and over-deliver. I tell every volunteer, do not say you're going to do something here. Don't say, I will be back next year, because that person will be waiting. As that bus pulls up, they'll be waiting for you. So please be mindful. Don't make any donation. Don't give them anything. Give it through the manager on site who will distribute it. So anyway, I think I've probably said everything I need to say about what we try and do.
Thank you so much. I'm going to switch to your 1 second. To your
yeah, and that video is an old video we did a couple of years ago. We're not big on promoting ourselves to raise money. So that was just a fundraising video. I think we did 3 years ago, something.
And it is very, very cute. So let me share that with everybody, and I'll be back to ask you another question in a moment.
Okay.
The Footprints Foundation, founded by Bob Holt, OBE, improves health, education and housing across the world, with a particular focus on South Africa. Here, our focus is developing and safeguarding vulnerable and orphan children, encouraging education and developing social spaces and housing. There are almost 18 million children and 4 million orphans in South Africa. As many as 60% of these live in poverty. The Kaya Centre provides a daily feeding programme for over 1,000 children and adults and preschool education for the children. There is a dedicated health clinic on site which offers primary care to the children but also sexual health services for the community. South Africa has the largest HIV epidemic in the world. The clinic provides HIV screening for the community as well as antiviral treatment for the children at the centre.
This is the crisis room at the Kaya Centre. Children come here when they've suffered abuse and rape. They come here for help and advice. They come here for some love. They get given warm blankets. They get support from counsellors, and they get the support that they need to get them through the hard times.
We are so proud to support the Kaya Centre. Thank you so much for your support.
So basically what we're doing here, we're trying to get the kids off the streets by bringing them over here. During the week it's a drop-in centre. On weekends it's a church, of course. We cook for them and then we feed them. We sing, and basically we do all the activities just to get the kids off the street. I'd like to thank Jen and Ian Curry for all their support, for everything they've done for us. We are really, really grateful.
The Footprints Foundation support an orphanage in the deprived Orange Farm district which cares for 30 children. When we met the organisation, they only had one small room for the children to live and learn. Now they have 2 rooms, a kitchen and an annexed home for the teacher. The stories here are heartbreaking, but for all the amazing work here, there is so much more they need. Volunteers have helped to freshen the space up and furnish the rooms with toys and drawing materials, blankets and blow-up beds. However, there's no roof connecting the rooms to the kitchen and the toilet flooring is in need of refurbishment. The lives of the children would be drastically improved if these changes could happen. More than 5 million people in South Africa live in squatter camps, consisting of small tin shacks and in deprived conditions. Over 2,000 people live on this squatter camp alone. We have funded the installation of latrines, with the construction of more to be completed soon.
Bob, I think you underplayed what you do in your talk when you were talking to us earlier. It's amazing the reach and the things that you've done. I think we're all proud of the English people and the Irishmen as to what they have done in the country. Question I wanted to ask you, as a businessman and a sharp, busy, dedicated businessman, how do you balance your charity desires, your family and your business life? How do you do it?
Well, in the nicest way, what they always say is, if you want something done, give it to a busy person. So, you know, I've worked every day since I was 16 years of age, so I'm not going to stop now. It's called planning, isn't it? I have to plan it well ahead. I do have certain commitments. I still chair at least one public company. So, but then again, in the nicest way, look, it's easy, isn't it? Because like Niall said, I give up a bit more than a week a year. I give up over several weeks a year, both in the UK and overseas. But I now have somebody who did it. The last time I was there, and Carmen, who runs it, after 2 days, I realised I was a pain in the backside because I'm saying, have you done, have you done, have you done? It's done, Bob. You know, leave it. So as ever, you have to know when to let other people get on with it. But the great thing for me is that in that Kaya Centre that was done there, and we've just started another feeding programme there, the stats are, before that Kaya Centre was there were 5 infant deaths a year. Post the Kaya Centre, infant mortality, 0. So you don't need to say any more, do you? Why wouldn't you give a few quid to actually do and sort something out of that? Anyway, yeah, we're very proud of what we've done, and it's a great, and it's fun. You know, we go out and have a lot of fun.
Give you a purpose in life. I can see it. Your eyes light up immediately. I'll come back to you shortly, but I think we're going to now move to Sir Nick Stadlen. If you may join me on camera. Sir Nick Stadlen, another friend, somebody I've known for many, many years now, and a staunch supporter of the South African Chamber, for which I really, really do thank you. A former judge of the High Court of England and Wales. He was appointed to the High Court's Queen's Bench division in October 2007 and retired early in April 2013. He comes from an interesting background, political activist, mother, and a pianist, composer, father. So we have 2 very, very different influences on Nick's life. The importance to Nick is the rule of law, and he saw this in the defining case of South Africa, in the defining humanitarian or human rights case in South Africa. And this is the Mandela trial case back in the early 63, and how the rule of law was victorious, but so were the individuals who actually changed South Africa's history. We would be in a very different place if that case had not turned out in the way that it did. And what has been so important for us is that Nick took the trouble to get it down in history, and only just in a nick of time, because all the key characters now, other than Nick, who is the key character in it as the storyteller, unfortunately, all the Rivonia trialists who were featured in a movie have died, and those that were only talked about had previously passed away. So that piece of our humanitarian part of the history has now left us. He's also renowned in 2005 for making the longest speech in British legal history, when he spoke for 119 days while defending the Bank of England in the Royal Courts of Justice. But I have to say, in his post-legal career, he's learned brevity. So we get from him the sound bites, we get the information, we get the passion. We don't get 119 days. So guys, don't worry, we will finish within the hour. Nick has had the vision for the film that you're going to see a piece of the trailer of in a moment. He wanted the film to educate people about the genuine history that many young people, youth, and also people who were around at that time had no idea was as groundbreaking and as influential on the country's history as it's been. He directed it, he played the lead character in it, and he funded it. He literally, this is him. This is his everything that he has put into the film. So we will look at the trailer in a moment, but just let's have a few words of passion from Sir Nick Stadlen first. Nick, share with us who was the most interesting interview out of all those you did? And I know a lot of them ended up on the floor because you had to snip out so many. So irrespective of whether they made it to the final version or not, what was the most interesting interview and why?
Actually, of all the people that I interviewed, the one who only has a cameo role because of pressure of time was Leslie Schönbrücker, who had a husband who was facing a 7-year prison sentence under the Communism Act, had herself been arrested for supporting Bram Fischer when he was underground, and was then threatened with, on top of the 2 years that she was going to get under the Communism Act, another 300 days for contempt of court for refusing to give evidence against Bram Fischer, who was the QC who successfully defended Mandela in the Rivonia trial. And I said, look, you had two young children, you had two children at home. One of them was an adolescent. This is an incredibly selfless and brave act on your part. No, she said, not at all. They knew what our politics were. They knew that one day we would go to prison. It was fine. We'd come out and all be all fine. And I just thought, for an 80-year-old, then 88-year-old woman, this was just fantastic. But she was just representative of all the people in the film, because what the film is based on is interviews I did, not unfortunately with the great Mandela, who was by then dead, but with the ordinary men and women, the infantrymen and women, led by the great General Mandela, who made the same sacrifices, took the same risks, had the same integrity and the same courage that Mandela had. And what was new to me when I came across this, quite by chance, was that most people, not only around the world, but even in South Africa, as I discovered, just assumed that apartheid was ended by the great Mandela. Wrong. There were other brave men and women who stood by him, and everybody only has one neck, and if you risk that neck, it doesn't matter whether you're a general or an infantryman. And I thought in particular, if I was a young South African, particularly in a township, and it was Christmas 2013, I stumbled across this, just at the beginning of real anger and disillusion with the years of state capture and corruption. If I, for example, were a young South African living in a township who had never experienced the cruelty and humiliation of apartheid and took my political freedoms for granted, and who just thought that politics is just corrupt and nothing for me, I would want to know that my political freedoms had been fought for by these incredibly brave and people with integrity. And since one of the main things about that period was the great scandal of the president who sought to charge the taxpayer for the swimming pool in his gin palace on the specious ground that it was necessary to put out fires. The remarkable thing about the co-defendants of Mandela, three of whom I interviewed, Dennis Goldberg, Andrew Mullingeney, and Kathy Kathrada, was that the same integrity that brought them to spend a quarter of a century in prison, they retained when they came out of prison. And they either worked for charities, they worked in politics, they did not in any way seek to benefit or exploit their proximity to the people in power. And they were fantastic and are fantastic role models. And it struck me very strongly that if South Africa is to overcome all the problems that it has, which everybody knows about, they need young people not to be disillusioned with politics and disillusioned with the possibility of change, but embracing it and asking themselves, if these ordinary people like Dennis and Andrew and Kathy could actually bring an end to apartheid without a civil war, which nobody thought was possible in 1963-64. Nobody thought that could happen. If they can do that, what can I do to make the current South Africa a better place? And that's why I decided to tell these stories. I discovered that very few people knew them. I did the interviews, and I then made this film, which I never expected to see the light of day, but it never occurred to me that I should not do it. It did see the light of day, and the Ministry of Basic Education have agreed to show it at all 6,500 secondary schools in South Africa, which is the main target. It is the next generation. If you imagine 1 million young South Africans currently disillusioned, seeing what these ordinary people, just like them, Dennis was an engineer, just like them, Andrew was a golf fanatic. If a million young South Africans could see what these people had achieved, not to line their own pockets, but to make the lives of their fellow countrymen and countrywomen better, and in the name of a really simple but fundamentally essential proposition, which is that racism is unacceptable, this would be a modest contribution to assisting President Ramaphosa, who is working from the top down, to change South Africa, to move it forward, to end the days of corruption, and in particular, to fight back against the incipient racism, which I'm sad to report, having taken this film around 50 Q&As and screenings around South Africa and in America, is on the rise. Indian against black, black against Indian, white against black. I mean, this is on the rise. And many of these young, innocent people were the prey of populist politicians who sought to divert attention from their own misfeasance by paying $1 million a month or whatever it was to Bell Pottinger to spread the false narrative that all the problems of modern South Africa are the result of post-colonial white capital. Well, I think all South Africans, be they white, black, Indian, coloured, whatever, have a right to know the truth. And I was privileged to attend Andrew Mellon's 93rd birthday, at which President Ramaphosa made the speech, and he said, at Nelson Mandela's funeral, the deputy president of the foreign country came up to me and said, South Africa is blessed in the most vital, valuable natural asset any country can possess, and that is living heroes. Well, they were just still living when I got to them. Sadly, as you say, they are now all dead, but their stories and their legacy lives on through the testimony that they have given in these interviews through the film. And we've set up Joel Joffe, who was Nelson Mandela's and all of their attorney, and John Battersby, who ran South African, was the editor of the Sunday Independent in South Africa and interviewed Mandela more than any other journalist, and Ben Valentin, the great QC. We've set up this charity to tell the modern generation, the current generation, about the history of South Africa, apartheid, and in particular now to try and raise money to enable this film to be shown in all the secondary schools in South Africa.
That's absolutely fantastic. Let's have a quick look at the trailer, and I'll be back with you in a moment, Nick. Not quite a moment. I think it's a bit longer than a moment. Let's enjoy.
We really expected death sentences. And when you look at the Gallows Together, there's a bond. It can never be broken, only by death. Well, first I have to tell you, he said it not as a challenge, but there was a hoarseness in his voice. It wasn't shouted, it was a very determined statement. And when he finished and sat down, there was a long silence in the court. In the audience, there was a kind of collective sigh because of the clear challenge to the judge, hang me if you dare. And I think in the end, it changed history.
If he was charged, would I defend him or handle the trial? And I said, yes, Hilda, I will do that, but I want to warn you that according to the media and the police, there is an incredibly strong case against all the accused and that they are likely to be hanged. And I added, I think that it won't be helped by the fact that public opinion is against the accused. And she turned to me and said, Mr. Joffe, you and I talk different languages. Public opinion of the whites may be against the accused, but public opinion of the majority of blacks and of non-whites is very strongly in favor of the accused. And that was a lesson for me.
After exchanging pleasantries, I asked him, Bram, for 9.5 months, involvement in the underground, was it worthwhile for you to give up your family, to give up your practice and go underground? He became angry with me. And he asked me, did you ask Nelson the same questions that you are putting to me? I said, no. If you did not ask him, didn't he have a practice? Didn't he have a family? Why did you not ask him? And why do you ask me? I had no answer.
After they pushed me out of the window, the one on the right held my right ankle, and the one on my left had my left ankle. And I was dangling with these two chaps holding my ankles. After asking you whether you were going to talk or not, the one would let go of the one ankle. And, you know, I don't think anyone can actually imagine or describe the feeling that goes through your head and body.
I said, what is it you want? Why are you here? Because they might have been here about a defense for one of their husbands or so on. They said, no, our husbands were hanged this morning in Pretoria, and we wanted to know how we can get their bodies.
I wanted people to be able to be people, to be human beings again.
We arrived at the prison and I said to then Colonel Oakamp, who was the head of prison security, you look so happy, you look like the cat that licked the cream. He turned on me with real anger and said, you should have been hanged. Yeah. And you will never get out of here, you'll never walk out of here on your own 2 feet. We'll carry you out feet first in a coffin. And well, I can tell you that as a brigadier general in the prison service, he passed away before we were released. I did walk out on my own 2 feet.
No, but you are so provocative. How can you say that way? It's provocation.
Well, of course. What more can they do to me? I'm in prison for life. What can they do?
You are a cheeky man, very cheeky bastard.
You know that our people are so tolerant of what happened, are able to let bygones be bygones. I think it's an astonishing act of generosity because the wounds are so deep in the perpetrators, in those who've suffered and their families. And yet somehow we've managed to hold it together.
Let us know that for each, the body, the mind and the soul have been freed to fulfill themselves. Never, never,
never again.
And never again shall it be that this beautiful land will again experience the oppression of one by another. God bless Africa. I thank you.
So when I say I'm proud to be here and come back here and rejoice in what we've achieved, that's why. Because of that speech, because of the people, because of what we've done.
Nick, I don't know how many times I've seen that, and it absolutely moves me every time. I do remember the moment with Andrew Mellon sharing his Freedom of the City of London, which was an honour to be part of. And there, above his head, is Mandela's Freedom of the City that he achieved as well. Question, Nick, before we open to the group. What out of all of this In the process, what was the piece of history that absolutely wowed you the most that you learned?
It was suddenly realizing, putting two and two together when I was doing this, that Mandela's famous speech, the peroration of his statement from the dock, which exposed him to a much greater risk of being hanged because he couldn't be subject to cross-examination, when he said that a free and fair democracy open to all to live in peace and harmony is an ideal for which if needs be I'm prepared to die. April 1964 came 8 months after Martin Luther King's famous speech, I have a dream, and I have a dream one day my daughters will be judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And these two speeches, which were two of the most important speeches in the 20th century, one led to the end of apartheid, albeit 20, 30 years later. The other led to the end of segregation in the Deep South. There was that parallel, but there was also the parallel that in both cases, the civil rights movement in America and the anti-apartheid struggle of the Rivonia Trialists, it wasn't just Black people fighting for their freedom, it was whites and Indians as well, and colored people, colored as they were called. And at the very heart of Mandela's philosophy was non-racialism. He said in the speech that he gave, the first Bram Fisher lecture, Bram Fisher, who was the QC who represented them all and was actually one of the co-conspirators and sentenced to life in prison himself. He said, with that background, Bram Fisher could not but have become an Afrikaner nationalist, as we became African nationalists 30 years later as a result of our oppression by whites. But both of us changed. Both of us rejected the notion that our political rights were to be determined by the color of our skins. We embraced each other as comrades, as brothers, to fight for the freedom of all in South Africa, to put an end to racism and exploitation. And that was at the heart of what Mandela believed in. It was also at the heart of what he achieved when he came out of prison. And those who attack Mandela as being in some way a sellout to the whites could not have got it more wrong. This was, he in the conduct of his trial, deliberately maximized the chances of his own execution in order to spread the message. And at the heart of the message was not Black power. At the heart of the message was non-racial democracy open to all. And you just get a flavor in those clips between Andrew and Dennis, one white, one Black, completely different backgrounds. But there was a camaraderie and a respect and a love for each other, which applied to all those Rivonia defendants and all their wives, their husbands, all that group of people. And so the two messages of this film, which I think are really relevant to the current South Africa, facing the problems it has, but in particular the battle at the moment between those in the ANC who want to revert to those Rivonia values and those who don't, is one, non-racialism is at the heart of it, and without non-racialism, there is no future for South Africa. And the second is, it isn't just the great once-in-a-lifetime charismatic leader like Mandela that can change the world. It's ordinary people, like you and me, like people in a township, like the white woman who burst into tears watching one of the launches in London, who said, I'm an Afrikaner, I was brought up in South Africa. Throughout my childhood, I was made to believe that I was personally responsible for the evils of apartheid. Nobody told me about Dennis Goldberg spending 25 years in prison. Nobody told me about Rusty Bernstein being at risk of the same thing. So it is something that unlocks one of the real deadlocks in South Africa at the moment, and which I think, it's not a sufficient condition for things getting better, but I do think it's a necessary condition that young people understand and embrace and take pride in their legacy, and then are inspired by that to follow their example in tackling the problems that South Africa has at the moment.
Thank you, Nick. So inspiring. Everybody has an epiphany moment when they listen to the movie, when they see the whole movie. And if, as you say, those many schools and those many children get that epiphany moment there, it does give some hope for the correct mindsets to be understood. There's been a couple of questions about how people can get hold of the movie. If you just make contact back on the email that we'll be sending you tomorrow, we will potentially run the movie again as the chamber, which, because we've had hundreds of people come in globally to watch the movie, we can potentially do that again. But any of those other interests, please send them through to the chamber. We'll pass them on to Nick and ensure that if they're in South Africa and you want it for a specific purpose there, rather than just seeing it, because I think what we'll do is we'll flag the movie again for the public at large early in the first quarter, Nick, if that works for you.
Great.
So we'll look at doing that. So please send your replies back to us, to the chamber, and we will make sure that they reach their home. I'd like to ask the panel to come back on to screen. And for everyone watching, I apologize, we are running a few moments over time, but I think you can understand why I wasn't going to stop anybody. I think we'll start with you, now we'll start with you because you were the furthest to go. Is there a last few sentences of inspiration, value, story, content that you really are burning to share before we go offline?
Well, it's probably to support those two great men that you've brought on the panel
you
today.
Always do it for other people.
As well, that I have 4 school-going boys, so I'm going to give them a bunch of chores, and whatever money they get from this, we're going to send it to support you, Nick, for the money you're trying to raise for that really important movie and program that is very necessary, that as many children as possible get to see. And wouldn't it be a lovely thing for anybody watching to say that they helped to promote that movie? And to Bob, it was really great to hear about your fantastic work. And so many times I've said to people in my charity, I would love to just go as an ordinary volunteer with no responsibility except to paint. So Bob, if you have space on one of your trips, I'd be honored to go down and volunteer with you for a couple of days and would look forward to it. So for both of those things, I'm very happy myself to do what everybody should do watching, is don't just watch this hour, do something to help those 2 great causes. And who knows, if there's somebody watching who can help us to get another mentor to teach kids for literacy, then I think this would be a great evening. So I'm signing up for a bit of painting with Bob, and I'm going to get my kids to support Nick. And just to say thank you. I was really lucky to become a good friend of Nelson Mandela, and when he left Cape Town, I'm a white guy, but he chose me. He wanted me to buy his home and to live in it. And he was even sending a message at the end of his life that it wasn't about black or white or brown. It was about anyone who's doing the right thing. And he wanted me to live in his house when he was leaving Cape Town. And I know I've told the story before, but on the last time that we were ever to meet, we knew it was our last meeting. And he reached across the table and held my hand and said that I should never forget that anything we want to do or achieve is possible through the power of the collective effort of people. And that's what's happening tonight. And well done to you, Sharon, for this evening, and to Nick on the great program that he's put together. And Philip, I look forward to watching it. And Bob, I'm going to paint a few of your walls badly next year.
Bob, some last thoughts from you. You're on mute, sorry, sir.
Sorry, yeah. I was incredibly moved by the film from Nick. One of the great compliments I had when I was in South Africa, because where I operate, and I think I've been there, the longest I've been on site is about a month. And I remember, broadly for 3-4 weeks, 3 weeks of that, I'm the only white face that's ever been seen. The great compliment was, one of the local guys said, who's the white guy? And the locals said, white guy? And they did this, they said, Bob's black. What do you mean, Bob's black? So I don't know what that means, but it means I'm black. And that for me was a great thing. But I think, Nick, what an incredible film, what a moving film. And Niall and I do our bit, of course we do. And we contribute, and we don't get anything from it personally, and it's great, and we go and we come back, and then we prepare to do it again. But what you're doing there, teaching the next generation, and what lots of people won't understand, and a number of times I say this to people here, They say, "Oh, where's your charity?" In the townships, you know, in some really remote areas of South Africa. Oh, right. And so the people must be poorly educated. I said, "How many languages do you speak?" Sorry, English. I said, "I don't speak to anybody who doesn't speak a minimum of 3 or 4 languages. What do you want about? Education." I meet some of the brightest people in South Africa that I meet anytime. And I spent most of my time working in the City of London, convincing these people to invest in my businesses. But great people, happy to support, but Nick, very moving. And I want to be first to get that film. And I'm happy to put a few quid in as well.
Thank you, Bob. Really appreciate it. We've shown the movie twice through the City of London and through the current Lord Mayor, who steps down next week. And we've had some really interesting take up at a corporate level from a couple of our members and people who've watched to see if they can help their individuals within their organizations to understand this. So it's not necessarily schools, but corporate environments are also picking up on the importance of the human rights aspect of it, and also the reconciliation and the positive humanitarian aspect of what's in it. So thank you very much, Bob. Really appreciate that. And so Nick, you have the last word.
Well, I would like to salute the fantastic work that Niall and Bob have done. I heard about, a few years ago, I spoke to Niall and heard about his wonderful week building, and I offered my services, and I could only assume that the failure to take it up was that you knew more about my capacity than than I was letting on. But I think it's both of the charities that you have set up do incredibly important work, and they're obviously, the sky's the limit in the amount of things that can be done to make South Africa, to help to contribute to South Africa fulfilling its destiny. The thing that always strikes me every time I go to South Africa is, despite all the chips that are stacked against progress, people are incredibly positive, they're enthusiastic, they are can-do. There is a can-do attitude in South Africa that I have not encountered anywhere else in the world. And it's got nothing to do whether you live in a township or you work in a newspaper or whatever. And being blessed as South Africa has been with this incredible heritage of bravery and integrity, I think that I have no doubt that that is an essential building block of South Africa getting out of overcoming the many problems that it has at the moment. Because if you can unleash the enthusiasm and the altruism of a whole generation of young people, the sky's the limit.
There's a question that's come through from the audience saying, what is the opportunity of this film being rolled out in the prison services? Because people in prison could understand what they can do when they come out. And I think that's very interesting. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you for that question. It's a brilliant idea, and one that we'll pursue. Thank you.
I want to formally close this. We don't have to stop. We can carry on chatting afterwards, but just to allow people who want to drop off the formality that the session is at its end. I'm not going to say anything more. This has been so profound and so moving, and always is when we do something like this, to learn what ordinary people are doing and changing the lives of so many, and so willingly and so openly, and taking along so many with them. And the part that Sir Nick was talking about a moment ago, we talk about the resilience of South Africa, and that has taken the country from the brink of the precipice and brought the country back so many times. And it's going to need a lot more resilience in the times ahead. And people like yourselves, all three of you, are the ones that support those that have the power, have the learning, have the capability to equally pull the country back from the precipice edge. And hopefully we will see the country saved in many ways. It's got, as you say, it's troubled, it's got a long way. But if people like you and I and our people on this line don't do something little, every single one of us, it all will help, and we know that. So I'd like to formally thank all three of you, Bob, Niall, Sir Nick. Thank you so much for your profound words. Please feel free to stay with us. Audience, please feel free to stay with us if you want to ask any further questions. but there has been on the chat line, there's some wonderful things which I will export and share with you, but it's been outstanding. And the last one that's just come up is very sweet. This is from Jill Ritchie, who is huge in the charity sector herself. Thanks to all outstanding initiatives, 3 honorary South Africans. There you go. You're black after all.
Thank you very much, Sharon, for organising this event. We're very grateful.
And we will promote all the charities in the letters coming out to everybody. It'll be on the website as well. You can always point people back to our website, and we'll put up the story of tonight's event up there. And with a bit of luck, we'll be able to promote it further in social media, because what you are doing is something we are so proud of. So thank you to everybody.